Hello everyone, this is Ron from High Tech Legion, and this is the latest addition to the GIGABYTE G1 Killer gaming motherboard family. This is the G1.Sniper2 motherboard. Unlike the first G1.Sniper motherboard, this is actually based on the Z68 chipset. The first one was based on the X58, the first line of G1 Killer motherboards, and now on the Z68 chipset, the G1.Sniper2 has a lot of unique features that are exclusive to upon itself, such as support for the upcoming 22nm CPUs, codenamed Ivy Bridge, and a native PCI-e Gen 3 support. Not many of the current motherboards right now offer this feature, and we are going to take a look at once we open up the box and look at the motherboard itself, because to have true PCI-e Gen 3 support, you need a specific type of chip in there. And of course it also has Killer E2100 and X5 Xtreme Fidelity for audio. And see, the box is the same, carries the same military themed. And if you flip the box to the back, you actually see a layout of what the motherboard looks like, just a preview. And you can see that it maintains the same aesthetic as the previous G1 Killer motherboards. It has a very military inspired design. You have your heatsink there, is a magazine. And let's take a glance at some of the features that this motherboard has. Now these are actually just the Z68 advanced features that GIGABYTE has employed on the G1 Killer motherboard that we haven't seen before. And previous G1 Killer motherboards, those are X58 based, which is the easy smart response. Now what that actually does is it simplifies the setup for the Intel smart response technology, where you use a hard drive, a regular disk drive, and an SSD to improve your performance of your system. And instead of creating array and then setting up Windows again and restarting your system, easy smart response, it just basically automates that process for you, so it's much easier. I believe GIGABYTE kind of did the same thing with their 2.2 terabyte support. The earlier RAID, the Easy RAID feature that was on previous GIGABYTE motherboards, I'm guessing they did the same. The GIGABYTE always wants to simplify the process for users, so their motherboards are not only for enthusiasts but for users who kind of don't want the hassle of taking too much time to setting up their system as well, to make it easier. Also, you have the Touch BIOS. This is a hybrid EFI technology. It is actually a software that runs on the desktop, unlike the other EFI implementations of most other motherboard manufacturers, where you press delete, for example, at the beginning. It will load an EFI interface instead of the traditional BIOS. What GIGABYTE has done is, when you do that in the beginning, it will load the traditional BIOS, but the Touch BIOS can actually access almost the same features while it is on your desktop. So it's a very powerful feature to have. And since this is a Z68 motherboard, it also has Lucid Virtu switchable graphics support, so you can use the Quick Sync feature, which is a very, very nice feature to have on a Intel Standard Bridge system. And see some more features. As already mentioned, the heat pipe design. GIGABYTE dubs it the locked and loaded heat pipe design, and of course two-way SLI and two-way crossfire support, whereas the Intel or AMD GPU. And as for the audio, they really went all out and actually have used Nichicon high-end audio capacitors. You have the Nichicon Muse ES here, and the Nichicon MW, as you can see, series capacitors. You can see there, and in the preview, you can see where it's located right here in the back. And it also has a built-in front audio headphone amplifier, and it has EMI and power interference shielding. And there's actually one more feature that on the box is notable, is the front access control panel. Appears to be USB 3.0. It's a nice feature to have. You can install it maybe, it doesn't say here if whether it's a 3.5 inch or 5.25 inch, but it's still a nice feature to have. You can install in your front panel, and I think it even has an overclock button. So let's actually, rather than hearing me talk, might as well open the box and see what the G1.Sniper2 looks like. Just lift from the top and pull the handle. is actually heavier than most packages. Just upright so I can pull. And even the box inside is military themed, as you can see. It's camouflaged and the digital camo pattern design. And you open it, it's black, and you can see the preview of the. Okay, just move that so it doesn't. There you go. See a nice overview there. There's a window, and you can see the G1.Sniper motherboard directly in. Let's just lift this. We can take a look at what the package contents are. Let me just put this aside. And in this container, you'll have, okay, appears to be, first thing is a poster. Now, you have the G1, see the G1 killers here. Actually, what I'm going to do is, let me just move that up, because it's hard to see when it's zoomed in, but see that is a target. And it's a double-sided poster you can use. Either you want to stare at the Gigabyte killers or a target. It's up to you. And what else can we find here? Just move the lights up so it doesn't get hit. And a G1 killer sticker set. Now, this looks interesting. You have maybe if you want to put it in your case or your locker. I suddenly have an overwhelming desire to watch Expendables. And right here you have the documentation and the driver CD and the user's manual. Let's see if it is multi-language or it's a thick all-English manual, which it is. I am looking at there's actually all English, as you can see. Very detailed manual, so that'll be an interesting read. And put that aside. And actually, I'm going to take out the entire bottom package, so it's much easier. So, okay. And just move this out of the way. There we go. Now we can get it, and you have another set of documentation here. The Intel Smart Response Technology Guide comes with its own guide, and it's actually multi-language this time. And another one is a multilingual installation guidebook, and it says the third European edition, depending on, I guess, your the area where you bought this. It seems most of the other languages are European languages. If you bought it in Asia, you get Asian language, obviously. So this is basically a quick guide of how to install and get your Gigabyte G1.Sniper motherboard running. And you have an SLI bridge. You have the I/O shield, which has a G1 Killer logo in there. It's actually textured. It's black, and it's actually labeled in there as well. It might be hard to see, but you can see it is labeled. And the back is just bare. And what do we have here? You have the, oh, I dropped the Gigabyte sticker. Surprisingly, it's a regular Gigabyte sticker. It's not any special G1 Killer. And this is the, let's see if it is SATA 3 or SATA 2 cable. It is not labeled, but there's also another set. They look very much identical, but it doesn't say whether they're both SATA 3 or SATA 2. We'll check the manual later. But here is the front panel. Let me just open this up. See, it is actually a bubble packaging. So it's sticky on this end, sealant. And see, it is actually a 5 1/4 inch. And Gigabyte even included mounting screws. You can install in your case. And here you have a SATA connector, your USB 3.0 header, and it's like a 5-pin header and another 4-pin header here, which let's look at it. Is a quick boost, which is the quick overclock, I guess. I'm not sure if it's the quick boost. I believe Gigabyte has this feature where you can increase the current running through your USB ports. I'm not sure if quick boost means that feature or if it's the quick overclock feature that's similarly found on the back of this motherboard that we saw on the back of the box. So we'll find it out later. And let me just put this away so we can take a closer look on the G1.Sniper motherboard itself. Here's the G1.Sniper2 out of the box, and the first thing we notice, of course, it has the same styling as the G1 Killer series motherboards that use the X68 chipset, but this one is actually a standard ATX form factor. And first you notice, of course, the PCI 2.0, since this is a Z68 motherboard, it only has ability to do two-way SLI. So there's actually, even though this heatsink is quite large, there's no NF200 chipset underneath. So if you're running these green ones are the PCI-e X16 slots. If you're running SLI, it'll run, or Crossfire, it'll run 8x 8x. If you're running a single card, it'll run at 16x. Although actually it is a PCI-e Express 3.0, PCI-e 3.0, so that means these CD4 chips in there. These enable the PCI Express 3.0 functionality, so that makes it a true PCI Express 3.0 slot. Also, you have a PCI slot, PCI-e X1 slot right above the first one, PCI-e X16 slot, and one directly below it. Now let's see if it has enough clearance to plug in a card. You can see there's the gigantic heatsink right here in the middle. It doesn't obstruct you plugging in a card there, unlike other motherboards. So that's a nice layout design there. And of course, you're running SLI. You want optimal cooling for both your cards, so they have placed two PCI slots in between the two PCI X16 slots for good cooling. And this actually is a PCI slot, another PCI slot right underneath for your legacy devices. Now see this large heatsink right here. It's actually a label. It says heatsink not a weapon, cannot be assembled as a firearm. So that's Gigabyte lawyers at work there, just in case of maybe a zombie apocalypse or an alien invasion. They're just reminding you that you cannot use your motherboard as a weapon. Although there's actually a ultra durable 3 extra copper content on this motherboard, so it's quite heavy, so you can actually use it as an axe or something. See at the back, like these heatsinks are all screwed in place, so they're not just easy to pull out. And see there, the middle one actually has an array of LEDs. There's 5 LEDs in there. I know it's an LED because there's something plugged in right there, and I don't know if it serves a function, if it's indicator of something. It might be a phase LED indicator, although there's only 5 of them. So actually, I don't think so, since I see here in the corner says phase LEDs right on the corner, so there's actually an LED there. So this is probably just for design. It probably stays constantly on since it's only a 2-pin wire it's using, so it will probably stays on. I'm assuming it's going to light up green to match the color theme. And the MOSFET heatsink right here, and this giant Northbridge heatsink right here, which actually there's no more Northbridge, so probably covering some other chip in there, and is connected by a thick heat pipe right there. And let's see, let's start actually in the CPU area. See in there has the LGA 1155 socket. So actually see if it might be Foxconn. There's no label, so I'm assuming it is. And you have your heatsink right there. Now there's actually sufficient space in there. They look big, but they're actually not as big as some heatsink, and there's actually sufficient clearance in the back, so you can plug in most of your high-end large heatsinks. And another good thing I've seen here is that Gigabyte has provided sufficient space. See, there's a gap there in between where the border of the mounting area is for your CPU and the first DIMM slot. See, you can run your fingers in there. There's extra spot. There's an extra slot there. So when you run like an NHD14, for example, it will not block the DIMM slot. So at least I'm eyeballing right now, but I'm pretty sure even my V6 GT heatsink will not be a problem. We'll try it later once I install it. And of course, if you're looking at the CPU, I'm going to look for the 8-pin power connector, which is located usually here on the top left corner. See the 8-pin power connector there, and the CPU fan header, which is usually located here on the right side. So it's actually here. So it's much easier when you're already plugging in your EPS 12 volt. You might as well plug in your CPU fan header. And there's also another 4-pin fan header right there, right beside it. And let's see what else. Here on the DIMM slots, the DIMM slots actually see a pair of them, and there's a little gap there in between just for extra airflow, just for keep your RAM modules healthy. They're alternating colored themed DIMM slots there for dual channel DDR3. And as I mentioned already, the phase LEDs are right here in the corner, and right here at the bottom you have the 24-pin power connector, and you have another fan header, 4-pin fan header. Now, as for we previously looked at, the this front panel access control that Gigabyte has provided for G1.Sniper has the USB 3.0 header, goes in here. So there's also now these are actually SATA ports, and there's a pair of gray ones, a pair of white ones, and there's actually 3 black ones. There's 2 in there and 1 more right there. And the black ones are actually SATA 2, while the white and gray are SATA 3. Now there is no label which one's the Intel and which one's the Marvell 9172 chipset controlled SATA 3, but I'm assuming the white ones are Intel, as they usually default are. That's why they're lumped together with the SATA 2 ports, and these are the other 2 SATA 3 ports are the Marvell 9172 powered SATA 3 ports. And let's see, at the bottom here are the headers. And let me just reset. So actually I'm going to move the camera closer so we can take a closer look. Alright, down here at the bottom you can find a pair of BIOS chips there, the M BIOS and B BIOS labels. You have a redundant BIOS backup function, and you also have a 4-pin fan header right in the very corner, and there's this OC button. You can see it's labeled OC button with a fan with 5 pins there, and it goes here to the front control panel that Gigabyte's provided, where the OC button plugs in over there. Very quick overclock and press the front panel button. And also here is the front panel connectors. We're not only labeled, you see there, it's a table there which clearly labels where they are, and they're also color coded, and the polarity is marked by a plus sign. That's very convenient. I don't have to check the manual every time I plug in something. And there's also the trusted platform module headers right there, and a COM1 header. It's also a red, it's labeled red, but it's a USB 2.0 header. It's actually 3 in total, 1, 2, 3. The one is red. I don't think it's any different from what is in the back, but also you have another 4-pin fan header at the bottom, and here's the front panel audio header. Now it's nice that Gigabyte actually placed the front panel audio headers where most manufacturers would place there as well, because when you're organizing your cables for cable management, it's much easier when it's down there rather than here, where Gigabyte used to place all their front panel audio headers on their motherboard, because what would happen is you have to route the cables in the middle of your motherboard and it has to interfere with all other components. So it's nice that it's down there, so it keeps everything neat and organized. Now in this corner is what Gigabyte dubs the super hearing functionality of the G1.Sniper series motherboards, and here you can see the creative chip right there, and actually there's a Hynix memory chip that means it has dedicated memory, and see sprinkled all out are several dedicated front audio amplifiers, and it's made of high quality components as well. You have the see the Nichicon capacitors here, and see the copper shielding all around it to provide EMI and power shield. And also you can see another chip, although not related to audio, but it is for the network, the Killer E2100 chip. And now Gigabyte didn't use Realtek or Intel for their Ethernet, but they use the Killer E2100, so the G1.Sniper is dedicated for gamers. That's why they decided to use that. And now here at the back, you can see the rear connectors. You have 5 audio connectors and an SPDIF optical out. And the red ports are actually the USB 2.0 ports. There are 6 red ones, but actually there are a total of 10 USB 2.0 ports, since there is another black port in there. And underneath is an eSATA and a USB 2.0 combination port. Now of course the blue ones are the USB 3.0 ports, and here being as a covering for protection is the HDMI port. So you can use the unlike other motherboards, for some reason they don't provide a video out on the motherboard, so you can't use Lucid Virtu. What it does is basically you can use your integrated graphics with your Intel, even if you have a discrete graphics card plugged in. The discrete will kick in if you're playing, but if you want to use QuickSync, for example, you can use the Intel QuickSync because you have an HDMI or any display connector in the rear. And that's good that Gigabyte has included that in the G1.Sniper2 motherboard. And there's also a PS2 connector for legacy users. That'll be an older keyboard or a mouse. And also, is protected right there, is a OC button. See that it's actually a plastic cover, so you don't. It's a hard plastic shell which flips up if you need to use it. But so that's nice that it's protected, so you don't accidentally push it when it's installed into your system and you know, run its overclock while you're in the middle of a game. So if we covered everything, I think that pretty much does it. And what we're going to do, of course, is install this inside our system, the G1.Sniper2 motherboard, put in our 2600K CPU and see how well it performs.